Time and everything. Good morning and welcome to Gator's Garage, the home of all things historical and science fiction gaming in and around the great city of Savannah, Georgia. We have with us this morning a very special guest remotely in the garage from across the pond in England, giving us some of his evening time, Mr. Matthew Sprange of Mongoose Publishing. If you guys have followed the hobby at all, you know Mongoose very well for their work with Traveler and their work with, of course, the old Call to Arms game, the original, as well as Victory at Sea, which has now been picked up by Warlord Games. But Matthew, thanks for joining us this morning, and how you doing?
Hey, great to be here. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Hey, before we get too deep into here, folks, just a reminder, please do all the YouTube things, like, share, subscribe. Click that little bell icon to get informed of the new videos as we drop them. That all helps us grow as we're working toward our target of 1,000 viewers. So there you go. Well, like I say, Matthew, just do you go by Matthew or Matt, or just don't call you late for dinner?
Yeah, I mean, I've been called worse things, whatever you like.
Okay. Fantastic. I know Mongoose Publishing. How long has Mongoose been in business now?
24 years.
Okay, so I've tracked you guys for
25th. Next year's our anniversary.
Fantastic. So would love to ask you a bunch of Traveler questions. There'll be a couple of those at the end, and we'll probably circle back on that because I've got a Traveler project I'm working on too with Wargames Atlantic. Yeah, they're going to be dropping those new figures for Traveler, and we might talk some more about Traveler and that as that gets closer. But today we're talking about Call to Arms Starfleet, and for those of our viewers who are not familiar with the Starfleet universe, it is the old Kirk Star Trek universe from the 1960s, with the brakes taken off. So all the starship battles you wish you could have seen, well, now you can put them on the tabletop. And Mongoose and Amarillo Design Bureau did a partnership a few years ago where they took the Mongoose, a Call to Arms engine, which is a real simple, easy to play, fast play engine, and they worked it in with the Starfleet universe. So it's been very successful. I think it's their number 2 or number 3 selling line. And as I've been kind of growing my Amarillo Design Bureau stable of products, I got to looking at that and I thought, man, we're always saying what's an easier way to play Starfleet? Well, you don't get, in relation to Starfleet battles, you don't get much easier than Call to Arms. So Matt, what first got you interested in Star Trek?
I should make the caveat first that in terms of sci-fi fandoms, I am more the Star Wars than the Star Trek, but to hold the pitchforks coming my way, I will say that Wrath of Khan isn't just a good Star Trek movie; it's just flat out a good movie.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I was never really into the original series growing up as a kid, but I did end up making my way through Next Generation. Deep Space Nine would always be my first pick for Star Trek properties, but no, I mean it's just one of those things that's always around. I mean, if you're into science fiction, you're not going to escape Star Trek.
Absolutely. So how did you discover Starfleet battles and the Starfleet universe?
That first came across it when I was, I would have been 18, 19, and I'd actually just got my first full-time job at here's a name from the past, Grenadier Miniatures. I got taken on as a kind of junior games designer. And while working there, I took the opportunity to learn as many games as I could, getting used to all the different systems. I ended up picking up, I want to say Cadets Edition. Would that have been right for Starfleet Battles? It was not the box set, the kind of like a 32 or 48 pager that just gave you the grounding of the rules.
That would be the cadet rules. Yeah, we've got those in the shop, and yeah, they're great.
So that's how it started. And moved up to the box set, got a few of the supplements, and that's kind of how I started mucking around with it.
Well, fantastic, very good. I'm like you. I actually started with I started with what would have been the old Captain's Edition, which predates the Cadet rules,
Yeah,
and didn't do much with the Cadet rules for a long time until I started trying to teach people the game. And I was like, "Hey, these are pretty handy." So, and I still tell my demo guys, "Look, if you're going to teach the game, run the very basic run and gun demo rules. Leave the energy allocation aside. Get them excited about flying ships, and then teach them how to actually tweak
yeah,
the things." So fantastic. Well, welcome to the verse, as they say. And but so at some point you decided to do a game actually set in the Starfleet universe, the Starfleet Battles Call to Arms,
yeah.
based on your already proven Call to Arms game system.
Yeah,
So how did that come
from
about?
Babylon 5. I was trying to think before I chatted to you how that all started. At some point, I got chatting to Steve Cole at ADB, um, and from that conversation, we thought, it'd be a cool idea to transpose Starfleet to the Call to Arms rules. That might be a fun thing to do, and that's how it appeared. But the initial conversation, I honestly can't remember how we crossed paths on that.
Fantastic. Yeah. And like I say, it's definitely a worthy addition to the verse. I've not played it yet. Like I said, I just got myself a copy. It was the only Starfleet ship rules I didn't have. I've got Starfleet Battles, I've got Starmada. Uh and so I was like, well, what got my attention as I was playing around with Victory at Sea, and I remembered, hey, there's a Starfleet game
Hmm.
that's like this. Let's take a look at that. So, and I know when we talked, in some of the you and I preliminarily talked, you're like, man, we're reaching way back here. So, just doesn't have to be perfect, but what was some of the key challenges of setting a game in the Starfleet universe and trying to remain true to the as true as possible to the Starfleet universe while maintaining the overall simplicity that is
Yeah.
Call to Arms?
Well, that's always one of the fun things as a game designer. I mean, we have the core rules for that came from Victory at Sea, which was started off just as a side project to as a bit of fun, really. But from that, we um, managed to transpose the rules into first Babylon 5 and then Noble Armada. And each time you do that, you've got to sit back and think. You're not trying to copy over every single little thing because there's already a game that does that.
Right.
So you're trying to always keep a focus on the end effect, what you're trying to achieve in the end, rather than the steps to get there. And with a system like a Call to Arms that's based completely around a D6 system, you've got to think how you abstract things without necessarily losing the overall details. So in one D6 roll in a Call to Arms, you might be covering 7 or 8 steps within Starfleet Battles, but those steps are still there. You've just buried them down into a D6 roll, and it's you're always trying to think, how do you go about doing that? And in terms of games design, that's always going to be the interesting thing.
Right. Right. I'm actually working on a couple of designs myself, and that was one of the things I was looking at last night. It's like, I can put these 2 steps in 1 die roll, or I can put them in 2 die roll. And if I do that, what's that going to do to gameplay? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I see and hear exactly what you're saying. Was there? I guess
The answer is,
your work on. Go ahead.
yeah, sorry. The answer to that is almost always 1 dice roll, not 2.
Thank you for that bit of professional advice. I appreciate that. But yeah, so again, in flipping through the rules, I was looking it over, and it is absolutely looks like it's going to be an absolute blast to play. Pardon the pun. For the Starfleet players, for the Starfleet Battles players, if you know Starfleet Battles, it's at its best a 1 to 3 ship game, and yet I know players that have whole fleets, And
Mm.
so this set of rules, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, bro, you can put a whole squadron easily on the table. I'm actually thinking about bringing over one of the Starfleet scenarios, Refiner's Fire, which only involves 5 ships, over to Call to Arms because it's one of my favorite scenarios. So you got 3 cruisers on one side and 2 cruisers on another, with a random distractor target and so I would bet that would be a very fast game to play and probably a good introduction. So
Yeah,
I'm
I mean
always
that.
looking for. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, it scales up very, very well. So uh, you can go beyond squadrons. You can have entire fleets in it. But I must admit, our target was never the existing Starfleet battles players because they already had their game.
Right.
People I always had in the back of my head were people who had been raised and were playing Games Workshop's games, and they just
Yep.
reach the point where they start thinking, well, I've been doing Warhammer a lot now, what else is out there? And if they got any interest in Star Trek, they lock onto Call to Arms Starfleet. That was always the idea. And once you look at it in those terms, you might find a lot that's very comfortable if you've come from the Warhammer background within the Call to Arms rules.
I know the first thing you notice in Call to Arms is our familiar, and I've done some Games Workshop, mostly Lord of the Rings. I was a big Lord of the Rings fan, but still that ever popular 4+ to start with, and then build from that.
Yeah.
Really, that definitely helps carry over to the players, and then to your point, so many of the special actions that do what you need to get done in Starfleet. So yeah, that was one of the other reasons I started looking at Call to Arms as well as I'm like you. I'm always looking to add new players to the hobby, and so let's look at a game that's got a familiar IP, the Star Trek,
Yeah.
but something I can show to new players that they won't look at a rule book that's the size of the King James Bible and go, oh my gosh, what have I done? So I think Call to Arms absolutely fills that niche. What was what were some of the biggest successes that you had, you think?
One thing I always quite liked was obviously energy management is a major thing in Starfleet battles, and I always thought it'd be a shame if you didn't have some components of that. But actually tracking any kind of energy points and their usage really goes against the whole idea behind a call to arms. So you need to find some way to abstract that out, but still have it present within the game. As I said before, you can bury a whole lot into 1d6 roll. The way we got around that was using the various command abilities. So you can feed more power into weapons, or we need more power to the warp engine, Scotty. You can do all that, but it's by choosing a single action in your turn and getting trying to convince your crew to actually carry it out competently. And in that way, you can change the bonuses and penalties that each ship has. But you're doing it with one choice in one phase with one roll. And that just worked out very, very neatly.
Excellent. Yeah, that again, that's one of those things that keeps the game moving. And I got to tell you, the game, I think it's about 10 years old now, right?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, yeah. I see it played. I see it on almost every PEL. When I go to a show, I'll see Call to Arms Starfleet on there. It continues to be a very popular game.
That's always good to
I
see.
know. Yeah, yeah, I know it. At some point, you transition this pretty much 100% over to ADB, and they're doing all the expansion now and the publication and the rest of the growth of the IP. And
Yeah.
that's
I mean, once you move beyond the main empires, beyond the Federation, Klingons, Romulans, what have you, my knowledge of the Starfleet universe started to dwindle a lot. So it just made more sense for them to carry on the work. They were
right.
more invested. They started producing their own range of models for it. It just made more sense.
Excellent, excellent. Of course, your name's still on there, so there's still that that de facto partnership. And this is the kind of thing I do like to see in the hobby as well, is where you'll get two IPs, that are fairly strong in their own right, and they come together and make something that is a great, if you will, a boon to the hobby. And I think in this case, both of y'all have, because again, a very fast, easy playing game. People can actually either dip their toe in the Starfleet universe, or hey, go whole hog and whole crazy. And like we said, it's an opportunity to use the miniatures. And to your point, for this game, they have made the larger scale miniatures, which originally started out as part of the property, and they're beautiful. Now, I have the smaller scale miniatures, which is probably what I'll show it and demo it with, and players can do it either way. It's gaming. There's no wrong answers, as long as you're having fun.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to a different approach. We had this before with Call to Arms Babylon 5, because we inherited the miniatures range that have been done before. Done previously that.
Right.
And they'd done it in 2 scales as well, because they also had kind of a Starfleet Battles background, the developers of the previous game. We took a look at the miniatures and immediately says, no, we don't want the smaller scale, go for the large ones, because from our point of view, miniatures games are all about the spectacle on the battlefield. You want to see cool things happening, and if you have the larger and more detailed ships, it's just an additional experience on top of that.
Right.
Whereas the other approach is going for the small scale miniatures, because they're not the point anymore. They're showing the positions of where everything is. And it's the minutiae of control of the ships that is the important thing for those games. That's where the depth is. But that's not really what Call to Arms is. So the bigger, more detailed ships. Again, it's keeping the ex Warhammer player in mind. That's what they're going to gravitate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell demo guys all the time, and I'm sometimes surprised by the number of folks that are on my demo teams that don't have the minis. And I'm like, miniatures, I don't care if you're showing Starfleet or Starfleet Call to Arms, or Armada, Starmada. You want the miniatures, especially at a show, because that's what's going to snap someone's head around. You're absolutely right. Yep.
It's what we've seen with role-playing games. I mean, you go out and demo a role-playing game, that's great, but all you're doing is demoing it to the 5 or 6 people who are sitting around the table. You demo a miniatures game, you may only have 2 players, but you're also demoing it to everybody who walks past you as well. And that's where the bigger and nicer miniatures come in.
You're so right. And with my interest in growing the hobby, it's one of the things I'm all the time telling folks is get out in the shops, get out in the clubs, show people what you're doing, take pictures, get it on social media, talk it up. And people will come. They'll get interested. That's fantastic. Now, did this project influence any other projects that you worked on?
I think I'm right in saying, I'm thinking now, that Starfleet was the last strictly a Call to Arms project that we've worked on. I mean, we did work on the 2nd edition of Victory at Sea, which is kind of like going right back to the beginning again with Warlord Games. That was a lot of fun. But at the moment, we're not doing ourselves as Mongoose. We're not doing anything with a Call to Arms, but it's always sitting there. It's a cracking little system, I think.
Yes.
And if we go back to space combat, then I think that will be the vehicle for it.
Yeah. Like I say, when I first heard about Victory at Sea, I had previously played Babylon 5, absolutely enjoyed it. And so when I saw the rules for Victory at Sea, I'm like, I am so in. And then when I realized that the Call to Arms Starfleet is the same engine, I'm like, why have I taken so long to get into this game? Come on now, this is great. So I guess, and that leads to one of the other questions I had kind of knocking around. With you owning the Traveler IP, I know I said there wouldn't be a lot of Traveler questions, but I understand you now own the Traveler IP. Have you considered giving Traveler the call to arms system?
Yes. What?
Good.
Yes, that's a quick answer. What it would need is arrange dedicated miniatures for it, because we wouldn't want to do
Right.
counters or tiles or anything. And miniatures production is not something I'm interested in getting into. We did it in the past. I always said we're very good at making miniatures games. We weren't so good at making the miniatures themselves. So very happy to let somebody else do that. I'd say with Warlord Games, we passed Victory C on to them, but they also do all the ship miniatures now, which is something we were talking for years about doing, but never quite got round to. But they're primarily miniatures companies, so they start doing Victory C, and all the ships all of a sudden start appearing across all the fleets. They also do a game called SP2R, which is another one of our games, building war bands in the Ancients world. So we're very much miniatures gamers here. I mean, in our office, there's cabinets full of painted models for various.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing! What a place to work.
You should see the gaming room. We've got like a dozen 6x4 tables all set up with terrain. But yeah, I mean, so it's more of a case, not when we do Call to Arms Traveller, it's going to be when we do when we find a partner to do Traveller ship miniatures. I mean, talking before about War Games Atlantic doing their 2300 AD range, conversations were already being had about moving to Traveller as well. If that includes ships, we will probably inevitably do a Call to Arms Traveller as well.
That would be so good. So I know there have been companies over the years, and I remember I ran a game store about 15 years ago, and somebody had boxed sets. They were in metal, but they had boxed sets of Traveller ships, and there was the Zondani and the Imperium right out of the Fifth Frontier War. Yeah. So, well, I can personally tell you, if you do it and you do it with War Games Atlantic, Gator Games will be so at the forefront of pushing that out. I've been a Traveller fan. I'm a Traveller fan. I've played maybe twice in my life, only because of time and GMs. I own a bunch of the GW Traveller books. I haven't bought any of your stuff yet, but I'm contemplating buying the core book and making my wife play, because she's a gamer actually, so she would probably enjoy it. Especially the whole element of getting your character killed during character generation. That's just hilarious. But yeah, so again, as I was contemplating the interview here, I thought, wait a minute, these guys have Traveller? Because the older Traveller games suffer from the same challenges that the older Starfleet game does. That is, and even more so, they're generally GDW, and GDW never saw a rule they couldn't make complicated. It's like many of the older, I guess, and I know there's a British, some kind of British, what's that other Starship game that's real popular? But I know there are a couple of them out there, but nothing with the simplicity. And this, just to give you some encouragement, if you wanted to do the Fifth Frontier War, this would be the game engine to do it with.
It would. Yeah, I mean, this has got some mind. I mean, in the Traveller RPG, we've done the big ships, the cruisers and the dreadnoughts and the carriers, but we've only ever really looked at them in terms of how they interact with the kind of ships that the Travellers themselves are going to be flying around. And the answer to that is, if they shoot at you, you will die. That's quite simple.
Yes.
What we've looked at less is how those big ships interact with each other on a fleet level, and how the likes of drones and missiles and fighters and electronic warfare works. And that is going to be inherently interesting, but we've purposefully held off of that because it doesn't really have a place within an RPG per se. But if you can do it in miniatures form, you then have the opportunity to possibly cross the two. So the Travellers get into their big fight at the end of the campaign, and that's when a Call to Arms Traveller comes out. So there's all sorts of interesting things we can do there. And as I say, what the focus for me would be figuring out how fleets actually fight in Traveller, because it's all little scattered information at the moment. All needs to be brought together and figure out what exactly do fighters do, because there is an argument they don't make a great deal of sense, but they've been in the rules since the start of Travelers, so there is a reason for them. We need to find it.
Probably protection against system defense boats, which are basically like fast patrol craft in Starfleet battles.
Yeah,
so,
or point defense against incoming missiles would be another obvious one, but that is not really exciting, is it? You want or whether they become, I don't know, torpedo carriers or such like, you want some reason for fighters to be used in an offensive manner, because in science fiction, that's cool.
I love it. I have seen games where the fighters were part of, were used in a defensive manner. And of course, just to rabbit trail a bit, of course, if you follow the Battlestar Galactica IP, the fighters did both. They attacked the base ships, but they also provided missile defense for the Galactica. And I always thought that was a really, really interesting mix. So
yeah, there's the same with Star Wars, although that's probably not quite the right direction to go in for Traveler.
No. But yeah, so, and I've always, as a gamer, because I've never found it's almost easier as a gamer to find a partner to play a tactical game set like in the Traveler universe than to find 3 or 4 or 5 people to do an RPG. And I've always been, speaking for myself, and even some of the things I've seen, I've always thought that the Traveler universe, like the Starfleet universe and several others, definitely has room for some dedicated war games.
Absolutely,
even if they're not role playing per se, there's definitely those of us out there that would absolutely dive all over it. So wow, but really, appreciate the work that you put into A Call to Arms Starfleet. It is a fairly active community online. I came up through the Starfleet battle side of the house, so that's kind of where I've been focused. But on a go forward, I'm going to be giving it a lot more attention, because it's especially at this time in my life, and even talking to my friends. I've got old buddies. I got buddies that play Starfleet battles, and they're like, "Is there something easier? Because I want to break." And I'm like, "Yeah, we should take a look at this Call to Arms." So my viewers can certainly look to see some game reports on Call to Arms and some discussion on what's going on there. I do know, in looking at the basic rules, of course, Starfleet Call to Arms did not bring over the arm shuttles or the fighters. I don't know that Amarillo has any plans to integrate those yet, but I could see where you could, especially given as you technically have aircraft in Victory at Sea, and you could probably bring the fighters over very similar in Call to Arms, and thus keep from bogging the game down. Last thing you want to do is account for every shuttle on a fully loaded F-14 fighter. So I will tell you, just to make your head spin, we one time did a 40 fighter battle in Starfleet battles, and our table looked like NORAD. So fantastic. Hey, I forgot to ask you some key questions I like to ask everybody in the hobby. What first got you into gaming?
That would have been when I was in primary school, coming across the old Fighting Fantasy and Lone Wolf books, playing those for a couple of years there. Then we had a teaching assistant come in, saw what we were doing, and says, I've got a game you might want to see, so stay around after school. And that was Tunnels and Trolls. So that's what got me in.
So you came up through the role-playing side. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And so any games you're currently playing and enjoying?
Yes. At the moment, we're doing an awful lot of Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy,
Right.
Specifically their new Spearhead rules, which is a quick and dirty way of playing the game. Takes about an hour to get through a game, and you've got, I don't know, between 8 and 20 models on the table, each side maybe. But they have really pulled a blinder on these rules in terms of the gameplay, the streamlining, and the, funnily enough to say for Games Workshop, the balance between the forces. I think it's very possibly, I'm not going to say it's the best thing they've ever done. That would be, in terms of rules writing, that would be Space Hulk for my money. I'm not going to say it's better than that, but it might be as good as, and that's high praise.
That is, for me, my two favorite Games Workshop games remain Lord of the Rings, just a cracking sword and slash skirmish set of rules that you can play 6 to 60. I mean, it's fantastic. And then on the mass battles, and it didn't get a lot of traction, I think partly because they basically gave Lord of the Rings the apocalypse treatment, but their War of the Rings rules just
I
solid.
looked into that for a while.
Yes, yeah, so very solid. And and in terms of current gaming for 28 millimeter, and I've told a lot of the companies this, for 28 millimeter skirmishes, I think going to continue to be a much growing segment of the property because you don't have to paint so many minis. We all like that. I mean, we like to have lots of minis and we like to paint lots of minis, but then getting them on the table can be its own challenge. But skirmish gaming, and this is again what makes a Call to Arms Starfleet work, is it's essentially a skirmish game. But skirmish gaming allows players to fit tabletop gaming into both a busy life and, in the case of like Spearhead, or I do a lot with Blood and Plunder, Blood and Crowns, this Quar's War. These are all small footprint games that you can play on like a 3x3 instead of a 4x6, and again fits a lot more of the tight confines that a lot of us gamers find ourselves in. Now, Call to Arms, though, it's a 4x6, pretty solid. You might get squeezed by with a 4x4, but you really want that 4x6.
Yeah, I always had 6x4 in mind when I was writing the rules. A God's own table, I call it.
God's own table. I love it. Fantastic. All right. So, man, just thank you for your time. And you got anything else? Anything else for the hobby you'd like to share before we exit?
Oh, we've got so much going on at the moment.
Well, tell us about it. What you got going on? Tell us.
Well, I think the next big thing you'll see from us is we've got a new RPG coming out end of this year. All going well, he said.
Okay.
Touch wood. It's what we call Traveler adjacent. So it uses the core mechanics of Traveler, but we twist them and bend them a bit like we do with the Call to Arms between Babylon 5 and Starfleet. It's called Pioneer. It's set in the very near future, just like 2 to 5 years ahead. And it's all about space exploration of the solar system.
I love it already.
Your players will be the first to walk on Mars, the first to set up a moon base, the first to mine an asteroid. It's all about firsts and putting players in the front seat and actually doing it. There's no actual combat in the game. The main enemy is going to be the environment. That's what they're going to have to figure out. If you figure films like The Martian or Gravity, the Expanse is too high technology. That's not what you're going to be messing around with. But those near future films, that's very much what it's going to be about.
Wow, and what a different approach to role playing. Instead of grab the treasure, kill the baddies. Check your air supply and grab a suit patch.
Yes.
Well, wow, I am looking forward to hearing about that, Matthew. And again, I'll keep an eye on your socials as they come out. I'll flip them out and let people know that's going on. That's again a nice. I have seen some movement in the hobby for folks that want things that are maybe a little less wargamey, and I bet you that's going to absolutely fit the bill. What else you got going on that you can share?
So I'm in the office right now. They're all sitting over there. So at the moment, Sand is working on laying out the invasion campaign for 2300 AD, which is all about the Capers smashing into the French arm. It's based on an adventure or two that was released for 2300 way back when. We've expanded it into 2 big hardback books. Your players will start off as basically farmers on a colony world, and that they'll end up being war heroes. I mean, there is kind of a vibe of the Expanse in there, because they'll end up with their own warship that they get to use themselves.
Nice.
Bella's currently working on Vanaheima, which is one of the 9 realms in our Shield Maidens Viking Cyberpunk MASH RPG. Abby is working on Armies of the Fifth Frontier War, which will tell you what's happening on the ground during that big conflict. And Kathy is currently working on laying out the Singularity campaign, which is a Kickstarter we just finished, that will have players questioning the capabilities and ethics of artificial intelligence, the same questions we face today, but they're doing on an interstellar scale. So that's some arguments around the table.
That's fantastic. And you saw the thumbs up, the armies of the Fifth Frontier War. That is something that has needed some development. Like many things, Traveler, you've seen some peaks. I have Armies of the Imperium from Steve Jackson Games and some of the other source books. And they give you some hints. They give you really good, fairly good tables of organization for the Imperium, but not so much for their enemies. So I am looking forward to that book. I may pick that up just as a source book for my sci-fi campaigns. So I do a lot of that. RPG books inform a lot of what I do tactically. Wow, Matthew, nice to talk to you this morning. Would love to circle back when War Games Atlantic launches the Traveler miniatures.
Yeah, you'd be welcome.
And maybe kind of do a review of that and a review of other plans you have coming with Traveler, and maybe make this something we do whenever we have a good release that kind of crosses paths between the two of us. And if I haven't said it, thanks for all the work you've done for the hobby.
Thank you.
I've been around the hobby enough to know that often running a business in this hobby is as much a labor of love as anything else. And you guys have been a stalwart, and we really appreciate it a lot.
Oh, thank you very much.
There you have it.
Appreciated.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And well, there you have it, folks. Matthew Sprange from Mongoose Publishing. Kind of covered the waterfront here. Some Starfleet, some Traveler, Call to Arms, some new products that are going to be coming down the pipe from Mongoose. You kind of maybe heard it here first, so there you go. Pass the word. And as we're wrapping up, again, remember to smash that like button, click share, click subscribe. I like to say share with your friends, share with your enemies, just share. Help us grow that Gator tribe. This is thirsty work. If you want to buy us a cup of coffee, you can click our Ko-Fi link or Mike's having brain issues this morning. You can click our Patreon link down below. Maybe Mike needs more coffee. See, needs more Patreon. But best way to support the channel is to buy some merch from Gator Games and books. And as always, thank you for your time and happy gaming.